Sparks fly in slow motion. A rusty, gutted-out shell of a 30s coupe sits in the corner of a Nova Scotia garage. In the background, you hear the sound of a welder crackling, and then silence. Chad Hiltz, better known to the world as Bad Chad, stands motionless. Covered in soot, sweat, and grit, he wipes his brow and stares at the build in front of him. Not with pride, but with something heavier. Because behind every masterpiece is a past no one sees. On TV, he's the scrappy genius, the guy who turns junkyard throwaways into rolling artwork, the man who can bend rusted metal into one-of-a-kind hot rods with little more than scrap and imagination. But that's not where his story starts, and it's sure as hell not how it was supposed to end. Before the shop, before Jolene, before the Discovery Channel cameras ever rolled, Chad Hiltz was headed nowhere fast. Born and raised in the small town of Canning, Nova Scotia, Chad didn't grow up in the world of classic cars or custom builds. He didn't have access to high-end tools, shiny garages, or even a support system. He had the opposite: poverty, isolation, and chaos. He dropped out of high school as a teenager, got arrested, slept in cars, dabbled in drugs, and by his 20s, most people had written him off as just another burnout with a bad temper and no future. But deep down, something was brewing. A hunger, a vision, a belief that maybe, just maybe, he could build something beautiful out of the broken. This is the story of a man who didn't just beat the odds, he rebuilt them. He may build cars out of rust, but his story? It's forged from something far stronger. Canning, Nova Scotia. A small coastal town where everyone knows your name and your mistakes. For Chad Hiltz, that meant growing up under a microscope. He didn't fit the mold. He wasn't the straight-A student. He wasn't headed for college or a trade school. By the time he hit his teens, it was clear. Chad was different. But different isn't always welcomed in a town built on routine. School didn't work for him. He clashed with teachers, rejected authority, and struggled to sit still in a system that had no patience for creativity. He dropped out of high school early, labeled a troublemaker, before he ever had a chance to prove himself. From there, life got hard and fast. Jobs came and went. Chad bounced between couches, trailers, and sometimes just the back seat of a broken-down car. With no stable home, no clear path, and no one really in his corner, he survived off whatever he could hustle. Scrap metal, odd jobs, flipping parts. He learned how to stretch $1 into a meal, and a busted bolt into a second chance. But those chances didn't come easy, or often. He started running with the wrong crowd. Street fights, petty thefts, brush-ins with the law became normal. His rap sheet began to grow. Nothing that landed him in prison, but enough to stain his name around town. By his early 20s, Chad was spiraling. He wasn't building anything. He was breaking. And behind his tough talk and wild energy was a young man who felt left behind by the world and was starting to believe maybe he deserved it. He'd hit rock bottom, but buried in that rock was a spark. The deeper Chad fell, the harder it was to see a way out. His 20s were defined by chaos. Alcohol, drugs, and anger were a constant. He didn't just party, he self-destructed. Binge drinking became routine. Substance abuse blurred the days. And when he wasn't getting high or drunk, he was lashing out at friends, strangers, even those who tried to help him. Bar fights became frequent. Police got involved more than once. And slowly, Chad started burning bridges he didn't even know he needed. Old mentors gave up on him. Family pulled back. Friends distanced themselves. He was toxic, reckless, and, by his own admission, dangerous to be around. Chad wasn't just lost. He was angry. Angry at the world. Angry at himself. Angry that nothing seemed to work out. He had no structure, no savings, no plan. Just a trail of wreckage and a head full of static. There were nights he'd wake up in strange places, unsure how he got there. Days when he'd look in the mirror and not recognize the man staring back. His health declined. His mental state crumbled. His future? Non-existent. In one rare, brutally honest interview, Chad said, "I was a wreck. If I didn't have metal and tools, I'd be dead." But at that point, he didn't have tools. He barely had hope. And then one day, surrounded by rust and regret, he picked up a welder. Not because he had a vision, because he had nothing else left. That's when everything began to change. Most people find a career. Chad Hiltz found a lifeline. When he first picked up a welder, he wasn't thinking about art, fame, or even money. He just needed something, anything, to keep his hands busy and his mind out of the dark. It started with small fixes, patching panels, welding junk together. No budget, no blueprint, just raw instinct. But what came out of that instinct was something special. Chad didn't build by the book. He didn't even own the book. He built from gut, from vision, from chaos. His first full rat rod was pieced together from discarded parts and forgotten scrap. He slept in the shop while building it, surviving on vending machine snacks and fumes. It was ugly, it was loud, and it was his. He said building that car felt like therapy through metal. Every weld was a release. Every bolt tightened was a piece of his life clicking back into place. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was creating. Word spread. Local gearheads started taking notice. They didn't always understand his builds, but they respected his grind. Chad wasn't restoring cars to stock. He was making monsters out of trash, and there was something hypnotic about it. That rat rod didn't save him overnight, but it gave him something he hadn't had in years: control. And for a man who once couldn't control his own future, that was everything. When Jolene McIntyre walked into Chad's life, she didn't just see a builder. She saw something even Chad hadn't yet accepted: a visionary. At the time, Chad was still sleeping in his shop, eating scraps, and welding his emotions into metal. He was making cars that turned heads, sure, but he had no real plan, no business model, no clue what to do beyond the next build. He was brilliant, but scattered, focused, but volatile. Jolene, a recent business grad with sharp instincts and a no-nonsense attitude, didn't flinch. She didn't try to change Chad. She organized the chaos around him. She brought structure, systems, a future. She helped set up a brand, Bad Chad Customs. She filmed his builds, posted his work online, branded his rat rods with a name and an identity. Suddenly, Chad's wild, rust-born creations had a face, a name, and a platform. And they started drawing attention. But what mattered most? She grounded him. In interviews, Chad says Jolene was the first person to genuinely believe in him without agenda or pity. She became his partner in business and in life, a stabilizer to his fire. And he credits her with pulling him away from the self-destructive patterns he'd clung to for so long. "She changed everything," Chad once said. "She gave me something I didn't know I needed, a future." Their chemistry wasn't about perfection. It was balance. And in that balance, a brand and a second chance was born. The cars were already turning heads. Now, Thanks to Jolene, they were turning followers into fans. She began sharing videos and photos of Chad's process. Not filtered, not polished, just raw. Welding sparks, rat rods built from garbage, engines cobbled together with junkyard parts. It wasn't pretty, and that's exactly why it blew up. Bad Chad Customs wasn't about perfection. It was about possibility. Soon, the social media numbers started climbing. People weren't just curious, they were hooked. Here was this guy in small-town Nova Scotia, building Frankenstein hot rods with nothing but scrap and genius. No fancy shop, no million-dollar tools, just vision. That's when Discovery Channel called. They'd seen the videos, heard the buzz. They wanted to talk about turning Chad's work into a TV series. But Chad didn't celebrate. He didn't throw a party. He almost said no. "I didn't want them turning me into a clown," Chad later admitted. "TV's fake, and I'm not." But Jolene knew better. She saw what the exposure could do, not just for their business, but for the message. She told him, "Be the real you. Tell your story, or someone else will tell it wrong." So Chad said yes, but he had one condition. No scripts, no fake drama. Just real cars, real builds, and real grit. The network agreed, and just like that, Bad Chad Customs hit the airwaves. When Bad Chad Customs premiered, it didn't look like anything else on television. The builds were brutal. The parts were salvaged. The budget was microscopic. But the heart? Enormous. Viewers were instantly drawn in by Chad's honesty, his wild methods, and his fearless creativity. He didn't care about industry rules. He didn't care about car snobs. He built with what he had, and he made magic. Rat rods, custom hot rods, chopped coupes with tractor parts, metal wings. It was a madman's masterpiece every time. But it wasn't just the cars that kept people watching. It was Chad. The way he wore his heart on his sleeve, his willingness to admit his past, his love for Jolene, his obsessive work ethic, and most of all, his refusal to apologize for being different. Still, fame came with friction. Traditional car builders mocked him, called him trash builder, TV hack, fake fabricator. Chad didn't fight back, but he never forgot. The old wounds of being misunderstood were still raw. He kept his circle tight, trusted few, and stayed locked in his shop for 16-hour days, proving again and again that you can't fake passion. He used the platform to speak at schools, to mentor kids, to tell the broken ones that their story doesn't have to end the way it started. Because if he could make gold from rust, they could too. Fame brought a spotlight, but it didn't erase the shadows. Even with a hit TV show, a growing fan base, and international attention, Chad Hiltz never really left the guy who used to sleep in a cold garage, welding through the night just to stay sane. That raw, unfiltered version of himself, it never disappeared. It just put on a welder's mask and kept grinding. Behind the camera, Chad still battles demons, anxiety, self-doubt, trust issues. He said in interviews that he doesn't like being around too many people, doesn't do fancy parties, doesn't care for big networking events. He keeps a small team, a tight circle, and a short list of people he lets in. And he still hears the criticism. To some in the car world, he's a gimmick, a TV builder, a guy who welds trash and calls it art. They don't understand his methods, or worse, they don't want to. But Chad's not building for them. He never was. "I'm not here to make museum pieces," he said. "I'm here to build what I see in my head, and maybe help someone else see what's in theirs." That philosophy has turned into action. Chad now spends time mentoring young builders, speaking at schools, taking time with kids who feel like they don't fit anywhere, just like he once did. He tells them, "I was you, angry, lost, thought I had no shot, but I found mine in a pile of junk." They don't always believe him at first, until they see what he's built. While other builders chase brand deals and luxury garages, Bad Chad still works out of the same modest shop in rural Nova Scotia. No valet parking, no Lamborghini collection, just grit, tools, and steel that still smells like the scrapyard. He doesn't measure success in dollars. He measures it in impact. And impact he's had. His garage hasn't just produced incredible cars. It's produced a message that resonates far beyond gearheads and hot rod junkies. His story, his hustle, and his refusal to quit has made him a symbol of second chances, of transformation, of what happens when you bet on yourself, even when no one else does. And while TV brought attention, it's his authenticity that earned loyalty. He never sold out, never polished his edges, never played the part of the celebrity mechanic. He stayed wild, stayed weird, stayed real. His rat rods are more than builds. They're declarations. That creativity matters more than conformity. That beauty can come from brokenness. That you don't need $1 million. You need 1,000,000 reasons to get back up. "I built my life from garbage," he once said, "and I wouldn't trade it for anything brand new." Now, when people walk into Bad Chad Customs, they're not just looking for a cool car. They're looking for hope, for proof that it's never too late, that no past is too messy, that no scrap is too worthless to turn into something unforgettable. Chad still receives messages from fans across the world. "You made me believe I could build something with my life. Your story gave me the courage to be different. I was ready to give up. Then I watched you." These aren't casual compliments. They're lifelines. And maybe that's the legacy he's really leaving behind. Not the cars, not the fame, but the belief that your past doesn't define you. Your vision does. In the final scene, Chad walks out of his shop as the sun sets behind him. No speech, no glamour, just that signature stare, that quiet defiance, and the sound of metal being reshaped. Again. Because Chad isn't done building, he's just getting started. He may build cars out of rust, but his story? It's pure gold.